Hey there, writing buddies. In today's video, we're going to talk about prologue. Thanks to my wife and a few others on TikTok, I found that some people don't actually read prologues. What the f? Let me know down in the comments below if you like to read prologues or if you're an agent of chaos who skips them. I've always viewed prologues as additional information that is not required for the main story, but usually interesting and something fun to have, which is why I always read them. As an author, I do see them in a little bit more of a utilitarian light now. They can convey the theme of the story, they can help the reader get acclimated to your writing style before they step into the main story's chapter 1, and they can provide a touch of world building. I do still see them as additional, which means that they cannot be integral to the main story. Unless, of course, whatever it is that was conveyed in the prologue is also reconveyed in some way in the main story. While I fully expect everyone to read it because I would, I have to write it separate from the main story as if it will be skipped. I'm going to be going over prologues and ways to make yours more interesting so that way people will know not to skip them. But first, we need to ask, are prologues boring? If I'm going to be 100% honest, yeah, they are. Oftentimes, prologues happen in vastly different times from when the main story is being taken place. And especially in fantasy, where you could have, a few decades, a few centuries, a few millennia in between. Typically, because of this, we are reading characters that we know are not going to make it into the main story, and our interest is immediately lessened. We know we're not here for the story, we're here for some piece of information. And readers can often fall into like this hunter mode, where they're going to be, just hunting for this piece of information that they're in this chapter for. They're not here for the story because they know that this story that they're reading is going to end at the end of the chapter, where chapter 1 will be a completely different story that somehow kind of ties into this just a little bit, a little clue here or there, whatever, and they're just there for those clues that will impact the story that they're going to actually read. So the rest of it is just boring. How do we make these prologues less boring? What can we do to make sure that they are engaging as possible? I got 5 tips for you, and number 1 is, this is something that I really enjoy, especially if we never get another POV chapter from this person in the main story ever again. Typically, it is going to be a chapter from someone who is a POV that is not going to be in the main story, and that's usually for the reasons I mentioned earlier, where the timelines just don't line up. If we change that and we have the POV from someone who is in the story, just not the main character, it can be more engaging to the reader, because now, rather than seeking just bits of information, they can feel like they're learning about the story, about at least one of the characters in the story, the entire way through. This is a little hard to do because obviously, at this point, the reader has probably only really read the back blurb. If that character is important enough to be in that back blurb, that would help out a lot, because it would signal to them, oh wait, hey, I know that name. That was on the back of the book, so this person is actually in the story. But there is a specific character who is best at this. Having the villain be the POV is the strongest point of view that we can possibly do for the chapter. Not only does it give us a POV that will not be used later, but it's also giving us the other side of the story. This can paint the villain differently than the way that our main character's POV paints them. It can give us insight into the villain's motives, or it can solidify their threat level from the start. If we're not going to be in the POV of a character who's in the story, then using the prologue to set the tone for the story is also a very good idea. If we treat the prologue as a teaser for our story, setting the tone for the book can engage the reader by heightening their anticipation for the journey that we're about to take them on. People often rave about the first chapter or prologue setting the tone, and that is really just because that is a mental trick to get the reader in the mind space for the entire rest of the novel. If you think about it, when you're watching a new series on television, the first couple episodes kind of take a little bit of time to get into it. Even if the acting is really good, the script writing is really good, everything about it's really good, it still takes just a little bit of time to kind of get into the story. And on subsequent watches, those first few episodes turn out to be way better than they were before, just because of the fact that you kind of now have the tonal shift of what the show is going for. The same thing can be happening with our books, where the first couple chapters might kind of take a little bit of time to get our readers into the tone of the story. But if we give them a prologue prologue to do that with, then they might be able to get into our tone more so. And also, if we're really saturating that chapter, if we're really saturating that prologue with our tone of the story, then when we go into chapter 1 and we're taking more time to introduce our characters and such, and we don't have a whole lot of time to really give over to tone, that's okay because the reader already has the tone from the prologue. Along with tone, another element that we can introduce, basically foreshadowing the story, is the theme. Many times, themes can be layered into our stories to where they're not exactly clear. We don't want to beat our readers over the head with some of these things, but we do want them to come away from our books with more than just the memory of a fun story, or at least most of us want to impart more than just a story to our readers. By using the prologue to point out the main theme of the book more clearly, this can help the reader pick up on some of those more subtle nods to the theme throughout the story. When we start a story, we all have to face that dreaded first line that is required to hook the reader. If we treat the first line of our prologue in the exact same manner, that is going to greatly increase the odds that the reader's going to be sucked in, even though it's just going to be one chapter. If we follow the guidelines for starting a novel, then we should be starting in the middle of an action somewhere. And that is also a big bonus to prologues. Throwing the reader into an unknown situation during a prologue is much easier for them to kind of acclimate, since they know that this is only gonna be one chapter and they're probably not gonna see these characters again, or it's a different POV kind of thing, right? They know that after the end of this chapter is over, they're gonna go and they're gonna basically start another story. Because of that, they're already kind of mentally prepared that whatever they're gonna be reading, it needs to be kind of like quick and to the point. They don't have time to wait around and like get some background information. They just need to get in there, get that information, and then get out so they can get on to the main story. Having prologues is a great way to give our readers more content. I like using all 5 of my tips in my prologues. Let me know how you use your prologues, or what are some of your favorite prologues down in the comments below. Hit that subscribe button for more content, and until next time, happy writing, happy reading.